What made the popular kid at school the unpopular kid? In elementary school, so popularity was already sort of a nebulous concept, but one boy got pantsed at recess and was found to be wearing diapers. Pretty sure he was incontinent, which has got to be a rough faking road for a little kid, especially since he didn't seem to have any other noticeable disabilities. Edit. Oh, wow. This blew up. If I remember, I'll add in the whole little saga of this incident when I get off work, at least the stuff I can still remember. Edit to the full story. So, this was in the late 90s. Maybe 98 or 99. We were in .20 grade. This kid, we'll just call him Timmy, was pretty well liked. He was a nice kid, got along with everyone pretty well. For whatever reason, the boys of my class were comparing undies on the playground. Like, oh, I got Scooby-Doo, or I got spaceships, or whatever. Why? Couldn't tell you. Little kids are faking weird. So, Timmy was the holdout of the group. Wouldn't tug down his pants to show what prints he had. He got accused of having jelly underwear, and one thing led to another, culminating in a couple of boys grabbing him and pulling down his pants, and boom, wasn't what anyone was expecting. Timmy didn't have jelly undies. He had on a big old diaper. In hindsight, it made a lot of things make sense. He had carte blanche to leave class to the nurse. He wore baggy pants, and every once in a while the classroom stank something fierce. He got teased pretty badly that day, and for a while afterwards. Though people eventually mellowed out about it once it was no longer the new thing. The story doesn't end there, though. This was one of the earliest moments in my life that I understood what empathy was. One of my biggest childhood nightmares got presented right in front of me. I was a bedwetter from the ages of 3 to around 13. And not just occasionally, but like every single night. So, for most of that time, I had to wear something similar every night. I was terrified that someone would find out and my life would be over. I was already a little socially outcast because I was an odd kid, which only magnified my fears. To my shame, I made fun of Timmy that day, and several days after, I'd call him names or tug at his waistband or whatever. It wasn't until I mentioned to my mom about him that I got an earful and a reminder that I had to wear the same thing at night. That stuck with me, and not much later than that, I apologized to him and instead tried to befriend him. But I didn't have a lot of friends, and he had lost a lot of his. Funnily enough, I guess 7-year-olds don't have a strong sense of loyalty. We were pretty good friends throughout elementary school. I told him my own secret to make him feel better, and I think it did, though I'm sure he was pretty pissed since I was such a dick about it at first. He was the only friend I felt completely comfortable having sleepovers with. Due to our collective shame, he moved away the first year of middle school, which was a bummer, and we didn't really reconnect at all until early high school, where we talked online. He never told me the exact reason that he had to wear them, or if he did, I don't remember. But it really seemed like he just couldn't control his bladder or bowels at all, so maybe he was incontinent due to a nerve injury or something. I don't know. But that's pretty much the gist of it. It seriously impacted his social life, but things certainly got better as people moved on. If anyone has any questions, I could try to answer, but I think I laid out as much as I could remember of something from over 20 years ago. Haha. He got into legal trouble because he and his team embezzled/misused $250K from the student union. The university kicked him out, stopped paying the annual $2 million to the student union, withhold funds, although that was later overruled by the courts, and revoked the privileges granted to the student union. Earlier this year, they stated that they and students are no affiliation to the student union. After 1 year of negotiations, his team was still running the student union because they were re-elected. They bought votes by offering pancakes, waffles and donuts for those who vote for their party, and had street volunteers that would pressure students to vote for the party. It actually led to a law being passed in Ontario that prevented universities to force students to pay non-mandatory fees. The scandal was revealed by a student party called the Rhino Party back in December 2018. January and February, heads started rolling, and law and accounting firms started getting involved to figure out how much was spent. It was rumored the figure was anywhere from $100K to $900K. Ontario provincial lawmakers passed the law in the summer of 2018. Starting fall 2019, I had a choice whether I wanted to pay auxiliary fees to support the student newspaper, NGOs that operated in the school, support the student union etc. That provincial law was recently overturned by the courts this year, so starting next fall, I'm forced to pay fees associated with groups that I don't support. Pointy went from being popular to being a school meme. There's actually a lot of bank statements available that showcase what they bought. When I was in primary school, the popular kid thought it would be funny to flush the class pet, a hamster called Nibbles, down the toilet. All the kids thought the hamster would have died. He quickly became known as the kid who killed a hamster. He ended up changing schools for another reason. By the way, the hamster survived. I don't know how pipes work, but I heard the caretaker eventually found him. The school still gave Nibbles away after that. Edit. Holy sheet, 1500 upvotes is the most I've ever got. Thank you. If you were wondering about the kid, he had bad ad or something like that. He was transferred to a school that specialized in kids with behavioral problems. He has a stable job as a bookmaker, but that's all I know about him. Also, although we were told Nibbles survived, we never saw him again. All we know is that he was given away to a random family. There is a possibility the teacher made that up, as another editor pointed out, and Nibbles actually did perish, and they just didn't want to upset us. She got pregnant at 17 and the father could have been one of two guys, both of whom were boyfriends of her close friends and neither of whom wanted anything more to do with her. My school actually had really good sex education and we knew about contraception from the age of about 11. Plus this was the UK, where contraception is free and easy to get, so she couldn't blame ignorance or lack of resources. She tried for the woe is me act and nobody wanted to be around her anymore. Edit. Since a lot of people are talking about double standards, I'll add that both potential fathers were also ostracized after that. They cheated on their girlfriends, both of whom were well liked, and had been stupid enough to not even use contraception, when they also couldn't plead ignorance or lack of access. As for the girl in question, she wasn't ostracized for having sex or even for getting pregnant. Really, the primary reason was that she'd slept with her close friends' boyfriends and, again, not even used protection. Plus when she went around looking for sympathy afterwards, rather than just accepting that she'd done something wrong, that made it so much worse. She tried to claim it was all her friends' fault for being bad girlfriends, and if they weren't, their boyfriends wouldn't have been interested in her. I went to school from 4th grade to high school with a kid my age whose father was a prominent city official in our town. Even though we lived only a few blocks from one another, we were in different worlds. My background was much more blue collar and unfortunately I lived in an alcoholic and physically violent household. For these and other reasons I never understood. His mother despised me and she wanted her son to have nothing to do with me. She actually called my mother once to suggest that she keep me away from her son, since our class in life was so very different. I found him smart and funny and fascinating and we pulled around. He wore slacks, while I wore jeans, and his suede shoes were much better than my sneakers by our high school years. He was a football letterman, while I was a band geek, and he was in college prep, while I took vocational courses. We still knew each other, but he was in a college track, and I was living day by day. As graduation approached, we learned that his parents had worked with the local congressman for his appointment to West Point. Wow. Tragically, the night of graduation he and his girlfriend went out with him driving drunk on a country road. He hit an oak tree, and she was killed. That's the last I ever heard of him, but once in a while I Google his name just to see if he might surface somewhere. I sometimes think of how mortified his status-conscious mother must have felt, and wonderful about his girlfriend's family and of course what happened to my friend who killed someone just before his life began. I wish him well over 40 years later. I'm just not sure what happens when life seems to be laid out before you with concrete expectations and it all goes so tragically wrong in the blink of an eye. Stopped coming to school. Didn't even do her exams in the end. Just sat at home and smoked weed all the time. Didn't even work. She just got boyfriends who would pay for everything for her. Became spiritual. Got the Hindu symbol tattooed on her finger. Got dreadlocks, etc. Posted weird photos on her Instagram. It's hard to explain, but she just sort of became weird. I once heard her talking to a bunch of 13-year-olds about how her boyfriend just got out of prison. She also always spoke about wanting to have a baby. This weed-smoking, non-working, 18-year-old girl wanted a child. In the end, nobody in my school even spoke to her anymore. Even her friends didn't like her much, because she was sort of a beach. She was popular, because she was super pretty and smart. It's sad. She obviously has no direction in her life. Her only qualifications are the exams we did when we were 15. Her brother and sister were still in the school. They were really nice and basically the opposite to her. I hope they do well. He punched a girl point in year 10th of secondary school. A girl spent months physically abusing him, slapping him, kicking him, punching him, throwing things at him, while screaming at him. Sometimes even in the middle of class, but no one would do anything about it. Not even the teachers. His little sister died to suicide, so I guess he just wasn't going to deal with anything. She swung at him. He dodged and got her good with a right hook. Knocked her ass to the ground in one bit. Her nose started bleeding, and blood came from her mouth. She started crying and howling. 3 teachers pinned this guy down to the ground. Didn't matter what he was going through, how hard his life had been. As soon as he swung back at his abuser, he was outcasted from all of his friend groups at school. He eventually transferred out of course, but not after he went through a complete social phasing. Nothing happened to the girl after either. Everyone saw her as the victim after all, so nothing was done about it. Some people knew she was the one in the wrong, but anyone that spoke out about it got the same treatment as the lad did. A somewhat more light-hearted one. We had a kid I'll call Dan who was incredibly popular because he played football, came from a wealthy-ish family, and had a whole bunch of girlfriends. He was quite stereotypically a straight kid who liked manly things and was academically gifted, but was never a bully. He was popular because of a combination of these things. When we came back from summer holidays in year 10, Dan had totally changed. Long emo hair, eyeliner, slouched when he walked, listened to metal, gave up football, came out as bisexual, and dated another male student. Nobody could quite decide what to make of it, and because we were teens it made our class uncomfortable. So sadly for about 6 months Dan was pretty much a non-person. Then, one day, something just gave, and we realized Dan was still the person he was before, and we were the ones being assholes. He never quite became the popular kid again, but everyone at school went back to liking him, and he had a large social circle, stayed at our school right through 6th form, and graduated with excellent marks. I have no idea what happened to him after school, and looking back such a sudden personality shift should maybe have rung some alarm bells, but I do think about him from time to time. I was an unpopular bullied kid, but he was never mean to me. She called the exchange student a peasant point. This was 10 years ago, when I was in year 12, and for some reason we had a bunch of exchange students in the midst of everyone dating partying. I wouldn't know. I was doing work point anyway. The popular girls were a group of maybe 10 girls that were human rakes with platinum or chocolate dyed hair and a fascination with designer brands. They had cars too, because I remember they driving past me at a bus stop screaming at me to die. So, basically, hot Swiss girl shows up, and the pettiest of them didn't like her having the popular guys like her, and being a polite guesty CT point apparently. One day this happened in CAF's community and family studies class. The popular girl in question shows up on a Monday and no one is talking to her or sitting next to her. So I ask someone. So on the prior weekend, they were having a house party and Kelsey, popular girl, started texting people that she'd stolen her parents' credit card to buy a dress to wear for about $300. Then showed up and had called the girl a peasant for not having a wardrobe of clothes to wear to their blowout party. There was rumors that she slept around for cash, did tricks, that her friends were extorting her for cash. We graduated 4 months later, only a few people spoke to her, and she was smashed at the formal, and most of them have gone off to work in real estate. I swam competitively through HS, but just wasn't quite good enough to continue in college. But, to stay connected to aquatics, I became a lifeguard and swim instructor for our university pool and all their school and community events. Many of the swimmers and water polo players were lifeguards/instructors themselves on the off seasons. Our head guard was the polo team's BMOC. He was a beast in the pool. He was cool, witty, handsome, the whole shebang. We'll call him Steve. Anyway, we get to work one morning and our big boss was out of his office, already a rare occurrence, and called us all together. I arrived a little late, so I only caught the end, where he kept saying no one talk about Steve in front of the guests. I don't even want to hear his name. Once we split to start the day, I was trying to find out what happened. Someone pulled out their phone and there he was. Steve's mugshot after being arrested for statutory rap. Turns out, he had a part-time job as a high school coach, and you can complete the picture. Point: I have never seen someone disappear so fast. His name was removed from team rosters, media promotionals, his position as a guard vacated and refilled, etc. It was a weird time. This was at the private school in my town. I went to the public. This guy had a video of his girlfriend in the shower. I don't know if they broke up and it was revenge, or if they were still together at the time, but he shared the video around a bit, and then the whole school either had a copy or had seen it, and it made its way around my school too. The police got involved because she was underage, and he was threatened with charges of distributing child pornography, and the only reason the charges didn't stick was because they would have had to charge her too, even if she only intended for him to see it. Having sexualized naked video footage of a minor is child pornography, even if you're the child and you filmed it yourself. The police did talks at our schools about sending naked pics and videos and such thing, etc. The school notified all parents and advised them to monitor the content of their kids' phones. Most people deleted it pretty quick after we were informed at assembly that it was considered child pornography and was illegal. Point: but people had already seen the footage and the girl was being bullied mercilessly, not just because of the fact she was in a widespread naked video, but because she had quite a bit of ungroomed pubic hair. People kept offering her razors, and some nasty girls bought a bunch of wax strips to their school and stuck some on her locker and bag and would try to stick them to her without her noticing. Point: anyway, a week or so later, and we weren't hearing much about it anymore from our school. Both schools use the same school buses, so students' social lives were really intertwined between both schools. We even did sports days together. And then one afternoon we had an impromptu assembly and got the whole "don't make or keep naked videos of yourself or other students on your phones" talk again. Some people knew already, but some of us were super confused. It turns out that the girl had made another video of herself showering and sent it to a bunch of people herself this time, except in the new video she was completely shaved. Point: I'd in. We had this one guy in high school who people generally liked, but over became this complete loser. He was aspiring to be a pilot and always talked about how him and his dad would fly together on weekends. For the most part he was a pretty cool kid. And then high school hit. During high school he became this complete sociopathic loser who did everything he could to try and come off as cool. He got into bikes and would always come to school decked out in biker gear. Fair enough if he didn't walk around like a harasser with his chest puffed out and bike helmet in his left hand. He was very obviously trying to seem badass, but nobody took him seriously because he was a joke. He always acted super pretentious around people, talking like he everything about cars and bikes, but every car mechanic in our school knew he was full of shit. Point: our school had this video production program where every Friday we would broadcast an episode of skits we worked on over the week. Apparently one week this kid hijacked the entire program just to put a 4-minute montage of him driving around the school parking lot on his bike. He struggled to keep jobs because he, for some reason though it was cool to get fired with a bang. One job in particular he got fired for eating ice cream toppings with a spoon in front of customers. He did dumb shit like this 9 times in 1 year and still thought he was being funny despite destroying his reputation. Last thing I remember is him losing it and dropping out senior year and moving to Nashville to live in this guy's garage. He currently works as a prison guard and I genuinely fear for his life. We had this stargazing camp, went with the gang, mostly boys and we were 2 girls. We were pretty chill, we basically slept there or didn't. Now we're all 13 to 14 and the other girl I was with was a 12-year-old. She was smart for her age. Anyways, next day at school, got wind from rumors that students got expelled and they were all near graduating. Now me being chummy with the teachers, I asked my science teacher on what TF had happened, but more politely, she confirmed that some boys had snuck in drugs and showed me the video. Now me being absolutely thankful that we were far away from that fiasco. Now keep in mind this is a school activity and this rarely happened, we were a lucky batch, but anyways, the thing is the whole sheet looked like a rave party I suppose, and we all watched horror movies on the screen. I didn't sleep because of gut feeling, and so did my boy classmate. I got off track, but I think those boys thought it will be cool for them to do drugs under, so many people and teachers inside the school got their SS expelled. This is an awful story, but I think I've mentioned it before. The head of the soccer team was one of the most popular guys in school, but he couldn't keep it in his pants. Originally he was quite popular for this as he slept with many girls, most of whom were also popular. However, he slipped up and slept with a school whore instead. Now because he slept with a girl who had a reputation, he became unpopular. The double standard was amazing to me then, and it still is today. Worst of all, we found out after the fact, was that he sexually assaulted her on the gymnasium floating track during school. They both got expelled, though she was allowed back after a long suspension when they found out it wasn't consensual, but because she didn't press charges they allowed him back in the school as well. He later was finally expelled after he was caught having sex with another girl in his car during school, which was parked in the student lot. TLDR. 5th grader threatens to do stabby on fellow classmate. Elementary school, 5th grade, 2011 to 2012. There was a girl named Patricia in my class. She was friends with the popular girls, so that made her a popular girl. During recess, the popular girls would walk around the playground and the field like they owned the place. They acted like they were too good to touch a piece of equipment. They gossiped about boys, other girls, teachers, and whatever bullshit 10 over 11-year-old girls gossip about. I'm not sure of the entire story, but I witnessed the following. Patricia wasn't in class one day. I was confused because Patricia never missed a day. On top of being a popular girl, she was also an A student and had a couple attendance awards. When it was time for recess, I overheard my teacher asking 3 of the popular girls, "Okay, where did you say she hid the knife?" I followed the teacher and the girls outside to one of the portables, outdoor classrooms. One of the girls told the teacher that the knives were there. There was a hole in the corner of the wood foundation, and you could easily see inside. "What's going on?" I asked one of the girls. While the teacher was searching the hole, Patricia brought a butcher's knife and wants to stab Kerrigan. She told me. The teacher got up from searching and told us to run along. I don't remember what happened after that. As far as I remember, the knife either didn't exist or it was never found. I do remember that when Patricia came back, she was shunned by the popular girls and pretty much the entire grade. I tried to make friends with her, but she told me to fuck off. I never saw her again after 5th grade. Patricia, if you're out there, then fuck you. I have a sad one. Girl I went to school with in grade 7, developed early and was the hot girl of the school that year. Every girl was her friend, hanging out with the older kids, dating the cool guys. She looked like a mean girl, but was actually super kind and nice to most people. I'm not body shaming here, it's just what happened. She grew to be about 5 minutes and 11 seconds, and was pretty much what someone now would call a thick girl. This was in the early 2000s when that was not in style. Couple that with we got a new hockey kid at our school in grade 9 who back then was the sickest, who hated her. Turns out back in grade 7, she had turned him down at a hockey game and he cried. He made up a rumor that she had slept with one of his friends from out of town and given him herpes. People started calling her fat, and by the end of grade 9 she was one of the most unpopular kids in school. She had maybe 2 friends. Good news for anyone reading this right now that may be going through the same thing. She is happily married and owns a cute little boutique clothing store. The cool hockey guy has a raging cocaine problem and hasn't done anything since high school. Kids are jerks. Those early years aren't going to reflect future you. There was this real asshole kid in my school in 10th grade, Jake, who used to pick on this one particular kid, Brian, faking time. Over nothing, really, just because the kid was extremely smart and a bit small for our age group. I was walking home one day after school and came upon a fight in some bushes, surrounded by kids cheering. I realized it was Jake kicking the shit out of Brian, and it pissed me off. So I ran over and pulled Jake off him and told everyone they should be ashamed and to get the fuck out of there. The next day I got to school to find out I had become a pariah overnight. Even my boyfriend dumped me. The only people who would talk to me were my 2 closest girlfriends and Brian. It was really messed up. I moved and changed schools about 2 weeks later, and people already knew me as that girl, so I was absolutely dreading it. On my first day, I found out these kids didn't think I was the asshole. Instead they were super supportive. It was so unexpected, and I suddenly wasn't the unpopular one anymore. Our school was close to this residential building, and there were some trees there. A gardener was cutting the branches, and this kid saw him. The gardener was a black man. The spoiled imbecile brat scream at him, "Look at the monkey climbing the tree." Everyone look at him like the dipshit he was, but his friends, who laughed, cause it was so funny. Anyways, it was a private expansive school, so the faker thought he could get away with anything. Not this time. The gardener called the police, and he had a chat with the principal and the dude. We heard the boy scream and cry and curse and so much noise. A few days later we found out why. The gardener made a threat: expel the racist imbecile, or he would sue the school. The principal went, "We need to talk the parents. We need to blah blah blah." The gardener said, "If you touch this phone, I'm suing the fuck out this school." Thus, the kid was politely invited to never come back. Today, when we talk about him, is something like, "Do you remember X? Who? The racist cunto, yeah. Nice way to be known out there." By the way, he was nearly 16 at the time. There is no excuse for his behavior. He was not a full-grown adult, but grown enough to take responsibility. He got unpopular because he wanted to mess with me. One kid in my school, it was 9th grade in Germany, didn't pass the year and had to do the 9th grade again with my class. He was new and instantly pretty popular because he was the oldest one and had many older friends. Him and I became good friends almost instantly and met really often. However, his tendency to be pissed quickly changed all that. After about a year or so, on a summer day, he texted me asking if I wanted to meet up with him, but I was really exhausted, so I said no. That s when he got pissed at me for not wanting to meet him, and he instantly started insulting me via text messages. I was just like, whatever. He lines, calm down, but he didn't. The next day I couldn't go to school because I got ill overnight and had to stay home. At some point I started to get messages from a lot of my friends telling me how disappointed they were in me. I did absolutely not know what was going on until one of them told me what happened. Apparently he told everybody that I had talked shit about them. For example, he told a female friend that I laughed about her huge nose, told another female I shamed her for dressing slutty, and even went so far to tell a black girl that I insulted her in really racist ways. All of this obviously never happened because I would never do such things, and I told them, but they didn't believe me over text messages, so I felt devastated for 2 days until I finally recovered from my cold and was able to go back to school, where I politely asked every individual person who was told these things if they would talk to me for 5 minutes. In total I spoke to about 15 people that day, clarifying things, and they understood what happened. At the end of the day everybody was bloody pissed at him, and he showed how much of a coward he was. When I asked him if he didn't want to beat me up, he texted me he would do that if I came back to school. As I was a lot taller than him, and he was rather unathletic, he obviously didn't want that, and talked himself out of it. His popularity was broken that day, and he left the school later that year because he failed class again. I was extremely popular my freshman year of high school. The coolest guys wanted to be cool with me, and the prettiest girls wanted to be on my arm. It was a big deal for me because I was bullied all through middle school and elementary. So imagine the shock when all the girls who insulted me in middle were envious because I never gave them the time of day in high. Anyway, there was this girl I knew who I used to call my best friend. Knew each other since we were 2. She was in no way popular and nowhere near pretty as the girls who were on my radar, but she was a lifelong friend and everyone knew that. Long story short, in a pathetic attempt to ride on my popularity, she told people we had sex. And since everyone knew me, word traveled fast. And since it was high school, everyone believed it to be true. An empire, a reputation that took months to build, destroyed in 30 minutes by a lie. In 7th grade going into 8th, a really popular girl was running for class president. A really dorky, awkward, but completely harmless, and generally very happy girl decided to run against her, but everyone just thought she was being weird, and had no chance of winning. The popular girl ran a smear campaign in middle school. She spread a bunch of bullshit about this happy little wallflower that absolutely nobody disliked. Not only did the dorky girl win the election, the popular girl was absolutely shunned, because she showed what an awful person she was. That same girl, in senior year, threatened the app history teacher that she would accuse him of something sexual, harassment, having a relationship, something, I forgot specifics, if he didn't pass her. He told her go ahead, he wouldn't give anyone a grade they didn't earn. I learned this as he was offering me extra credit opportunities 2/3 of the way through the semester to bring my grade up, as he did anyone who was failing, including her. The girl was vile, and I'm proud of my peers, over 25 years ago, not putting up with a mean girl's bully. Well, I'm not entirely sure she was "popular" by any means. I just knew she had a ton of friends that turned on me cause I accidentally talked shit about her to her boyfriend. I was new in the school, and she had made a rude comment to me cause I was trying to get my sheet in order for classes, and one teacher just refused to help me, so she and the teacher just hated me. I had no idea who she was until after. Anyways, main story. So she, liked to bully a lot of people, and one particular girl, that I became friends with was her target since elementary school. Was the most precious bean ever, so I normally stood up to cause she picked on the stupidest things about it became a thing between and I that, whenever she had something to say I would shut her down cause she just didn't have a retort. Well, one day decided to get into A's locker and steal her iPod. I knew it was her cause she saw her with it, but was able to hide it with someone that we couldn't physically prove it to the security guard. But she also never denied having it. I had gone to and said, look, what's the point of having it? You don't gain anything, so just give it back. I tried to be civil about it. She just would laugh at me and walk away. Well, the person she hid it with had come out and said she had stolen it, and everyone quickly turned on her and realized how mean she was. I never got her iPod back though cause had transferred schools faster than anyone I had ever seen. Even her boyfriend transferred. Everyone sat confused for the rest of the year as to what even happened during all of that cause it was unnecessary drama that started. You see, I wasn't popular in middle school. All the kids a grade below and above hated my guts. But the group of friends I had before high school were popular for years. Add me in and boom, I'm suddenly better than them. One in particular hated my guts. So, they did anything but rational and threw me against a locker. Then her friend decided to bang my head against it. Now, he could break like a stick. All I did was aim for the leg, and he was scramming, leaving me with the girl. She got me once in the nose and twice in the legs, but that wasn't my weakness. Her friend was doing that job. So before the principal came out, I landed a blow to her jaw. She got suspended for a couple weeks. I got off with a warning. Now, I did spend that afternoon in detention, so I could feel a little bit disciplined, but that was it. TLDR, I got harassed and resulted in her group being scuffed for the rest of the time in high school. I was actually pretty popular in middle school. Not a douche white type popular. I was just friends with pretty much everyone, and enjoyed hanging out with all the different groups. My home life was pretty shitty at the time, and I was under a lot of stress and working through some personal issues. Made sure never to share these issues with anyone, and tried to maintain the facade of being cool and nice to everyone. Except one day, I got caught looking at another person's quiz and the teacher threatened to call my mom, which was a huge trigger for me, because my mom was not a great person at the time. She suffers from mental illness, and is very irrational. I had a meltdown in front of the whole class. Crying, pleading, anything. I won't say I necessarily became unpopular, but everyone now knew that I had some mental health issues going on, and I got pretty embarrassed for a while. Turned out okay, but definitely was viewed differently by everyone at school after that. Mental illness sucks, y'all. There was a guy in our school that was the football star and one of the more successful students academically. He was very popular. There was a rumor that he threw a tantrum at his girlfriend's house and jerked off all over her bathroom. For whatever reason that was overlooked because everybody liked him. Then one night at a party he pulled knife on me and a couple of my friends for no reason. He had us cornered with the knife. The rest of the party was kind of frozen. They didn't want to do anything to set him off and make him stab one of us, and they certainly didn't want to get his attention turned to them. One of the more mature girls at the party talked him off the ledge. People started cooking off on him after that, and the episode with his girlfriend. Another girlfriend ended up accusing him of rap. Somehow that didn't go anywhere. But after that he was radioactive. We never saw him at parties and definitely was shunned by the football team. And now he's a cop. Terrifying. This girl in my school was the queen bee. Whatever she ordered everyone followed. Disobeying led to being outcasted and badly bullied. I moved to that town when I was 5, from a place where I had a ton of friends. For less than 2 years I had a friend there until her mum managed to secure her a place at a better school. I begged my mum to go with her and she refused. From then on I was alone. Even the teachers were awful to me, and I couldn't even tell my mum because she would punish me for whatever I said. The queen bee managed to make me give up pretty much. I was 8/9 when it happened. I stopped trying to fit in or talk to the other kids. The teachers already made me sit with the 4/5 year olds at lunch. It was humiliating, but Queen Bee got her way, and I broke. I was getting stress headache every Sunday evening when I had school from 6/7 years old. When I was 9/10 I broke completely. Gave me severe anxiety attacks that made me puke multiple times before school. Nothing was done as things got worse until it started affecting my mum. She was so angry at me, but eventually she screamed at my head teacher down the phone instead of screaming at me. Must have scared the head as suddenly school got better just enough so that I wasn't throwing up anymore. At 11 we went to high school, UK education. She tried to act how she used to, and I watched her struggling. A lot of her friends from outside of our primary school obviously didn't like her and would exclude her from things and she struggled to fit in. There was one day a year later she was being a beach to me before school started. I told her she was being a bully and to leave me alone. When I refused to take back what I said she told the class to follow her to the other side of the room and off she went. Now, I was very unpopular. I was a mess of a person from being isolated for so damn long. Instead of everyone following this girl, not a single person moved. She stood, sulking on the other side of the room, alone. It was glorious. I continued to quietly sit with the rest of my class talking around me. She came over a few minutes later and apologized. From then on she wasn't a beach to me, at least to my face, and even though school was hell, getting chased and beaten up daily by kids 2/3 years older, without her ruling the class, I was finally able to find my own group. Do I hate her for what she did to me? No. She was just a kid and she grew into a better person. I do still enjoy the memory of her crying under a table in year 8 because the entire class called her fat. She was fat, but she picked on me about my weight for the entire time I gained weight. I lost it, and she still had a go at me. She deserved it. I still don't know why she reacted like that. She must have known she was always the fat kid. Overall, I blame the asshole adults who let that crap happen. The people I don't forgive are the ones who relentlessly came after me when we were older. The adults who just let it happen and blamed me instead of dealing with the problem. Unfortunate story here. One of the popular guys in high school, I'll call him Nice Jock, only one of them actually, who was actually really nice to the rejects like me, and my group of nerds ain't even treated us like friends, was the target of affection of a girl. Won't use her name so let's call her Beach. You'll see why. So, Beach was in love with Nice Jock and wanted him to have sex with her. He wasn't interested and told her no, so the following day she told everyone that he raped her in the bathroom. Police got involved, and he was immediately expelled and lost the sports scholarship he was going to get, having been on the varsity football team and been rather good. Beach later told everyone that she had lied because he shouldn't have said no, and how could he? She was so sexy and anyone would want to fuck her. Nice jock was unable to find other schooling in the state and had to move states because of this kerfuffle. And yet nobody cared that she'd destroyed a kid's future out of spite from not wanting to stick his dick in her. Nobody treated her any differently than they had before, even after learning what she'd done. I still hate Beach to this day. I have a number of female friends who have been the victims of real rap. I knew straight away she was lying because she came to school the day after he rapped her with all smiles and bouncy giggles. Not a shred of difference between the previous day and that day. That just doesn't happen when someone is rapped. It just doesn't. And I was right. Just a matter of time before she did in fact proclaim her shenanigans with pride. And got zero backlash for it. A nice jock lost his future without being given the chance to defend himself. Never had much faith in the whole innocent until proven guilty thing because of that. Also been really jaded about the #metoo thing because of it. Because I know how easy it is to ruin people by lying for petty reasons. I know some of the stories from it are true, and it's a serious issue, but I'm really cynical because of this incident. So it's 7th grade, one of the most popular kids in the school, who is a state level wrestling champ, is my bully. Just shots on me constantly and generally makes me miserable. Like the kind who would act nice up front, just to stomp me in the dust in front of my peers. Anyway, it is my town's fall festival, and I'm hanging with friends, and he keeps walking by and spitting on me. This happens 3 times, and finally after all that has happened to me, a fuse in my brain blew out. I start building up the biggest grossest luggy I can muster, and while my bully is talking to some girls, I grab him by the shoulder, spin him around, and spit directly into his face. A fight starts. He choked me out, but before I blacked out I broke his nose. The kicker is that I was a super passive nice kid, so even if I got picked on a little by people in my school, once the town found out what happened to me and the circumstances around it, he was vilified to the point of his parents moving him out of town halfway through the year because no one would talk to him. The bullying of me stopped overnight, not just from him but from everyone. Kid in my school was called Sheep Faker because people think he faked sheep. The real story was he was playing DD and the party came across a herd of sheep blocking the path. The DM asked the party what they wanted to do. He said, "I fucked the sheep." It was a joke obviously. So somehow this started the rumor he faked sheep. It was the DM's fault because he started the joke. It was bad. The kid would come into school and people would start yelling "baba" at him. It pretty much ruined his life. He skipped school and eventually dropped out. This was in the early 90s, when you could get away with harassing people with no repercussions. The last straw was someone drew a picture of him faking a sheep and then printed a bunch of copies and hung them around school. Funny story was I was accused of it because I was an artist back then. Someone threw my name out there and I got called to the principal's office. I actually had to prove my innocence by showing my drawing style compared the picture. Not to mention I never knew the kid or even insulted him. A week later they found out who it was because he bragged about it. The kid only got suspended for a week. Oh man, I've got an after graduation downfall for the record books. Joseph Hester, everyone called him Joe I, and I'm okay with saying his name and you'll know why shortly. His dad was the art teacher. He was really involved with all the scholarly and artistic extracurricular clubs and events and community organizations. He had one of the highest GPAs in school and went on to be our valedictorian. To be fair, most of my crew really didn't like him, but we were the ones skating and playing in bands, and he was an overachieving goody two-shoes type. So after high school we forgot he existed. Flash forward to 6 or 7 years later, he was on the news for soliciting sex with a minor. Basically he was a teacher who coerced one of his 13 or 14-year-old students to masturbate on Skype with him regularly, and I think they may have kissed or fooled around in person as well. Pretty crazy turn of events. TLDR, the valedictorian of our high school became a teacher and went on to initiate sexual relations and jerk it on camera with a 13-year-old student of his. In 7th grade, one of the popular girls got pregnant by a 17-year-old and had to drop out. I'd say that was the quickest fall from grace I've seen. On the other side, my high school had this thing called youth government. All the kids who were in it became a popular clique. In my freshman year there was this huge scandal around it in my state, centered in my school. The guys had this game they'd play with how many girls they could fuck and what they could do with them, all during the different stated meetings. Each girl they faked had a different point value and each individual act had its own value as well. When I heard about it, it was sickening, but the sad part was even after the scandal all the boys involved got off scot-free. The main guy's actually working for the White House or something. I knew a few of the girls who were involved and it really took a toll on them. My high school years were filled with so much scandal. We even had a past middle school teacher kill himself because girls in our grade were accusing him of rap/sexual assault. Never did find out if he did it though. I think we all secretly hoped he didn't, because before all the accusations he was one of the school's most beloved teachers. In my freshman year, a girl who was going to be a senior washed up on shore at the start of the full semester. I guess I didn't realize until now how crazy it was that all this happened within the same 4-year span. I was sat next to a popular dude in English class in S2. For the Americans that's Britain's second year of high school. He made the class terrible for me. We sat at the very back of the class, his friends to the opposite side of me. The tables were split into 3 columns, 2, 4, 2. It started with the usual speaking to his pals over the next desk and snatching my stuff as a joke, which I found annoying but tolerable. He then began to push me into awkward situations with the 2 girls in front of us, introvert at the time, asking which one I would bang, which was hotter. Deliberately so they could hear, and getting into a conversation with them, ripping on me. The final straw was when he was talking about masturbation with them and trying to include me to the conversation. Now, you should know that in Britain children born in Jan/Feb are able to move forward a year. Basically I was 13, while they were mostly 14. I didn't do the deed at that point and I can't for the life of me understand why I would tell him so. Maybe I was trying to get him to shut up. Right in front of my face he tells his friends and the girls, one of which told him to shut the F up. Immediately, I begin to plan revenge. We got on the same bus, so I started to sit slightly closer to his group so I could perform some recon. Turns out he has a crush on one of the girls sitting in front of us. The same one who told him to shut up. After a few days his friends began asking him about his crush. Being the alpha chat macho man, he began exclaiming the things he was going to do. Remember, he's 14, even going so far as to stand up and dry hump the air. Thank God I was secretly recording when he began the alpha chat routine. I sent the video to one of my drama loving friends and the video passed around the school and made it the crush. I wasn't there when the crush assumingly crushed his hopes. See what I did there? And throughout the English class he hardly spoke again. 1-0 TLDR, he made harassed in English, so I destroyed his chances with his crush. Edit. Spelling. He was the sporty guy and always talking down on others who were not fit. Total stereotype. Lots of friends. His first girlfriend in grade 6 and stuff like that. Back then I was chubby, and he was constantly picking on me. When I said something to our teacher they just replied, well, you could lose some weight, so, you know, he is not wrong. After 6th grade his parents moved away for work, and so he had to switch schools. I didn't see him again before 12th grade, when he was back in my class on a different school. Well, I actually didn't recognize him at first. Turned out, half a year after he moved away, his parents got a divorce, and he didn't process it well. While I became fit and buffed over the years, he became really obese. And because of that, the kids on the other school were constantly picking on him. You really could tell that he broke more than once between 6th and 12th grade. He basically didn't talk much, had no friends at all, and became someone he himself would have bullied just a couple of years ago. I stayed as far away from him as I could. First of all, I had no interest in reuniting with someone who gave me hell when we were younger. And I also didn't need him around me in that state to feel better about myself. Like some sick revenge thing. I only felt sorry for his parents' divorce, but not for what he had become. I was that kid. I had weird talents, and was happy to be friends with everyone. So it was the perfect recipe for elementary school popularity. Well, one day, I got a new lunchbox and proudly showed it to a kid named Austin, who then proceeded to kick it, breaking it. Then he ran. So I chased. Eventually he stopped and told me that he would like to fight me. I had never been in a fight, but my dad told me that if I was ever hit, to hit back. So I stood there like an idiot waiting for whatever was coming. That made Austin mad, so he called over 2 more boys, both named Zach. I still stood there, having never been in a fight, trying to look unflappable, while flapping wildly internally. I was looking at Austin when one of the Zachs took a swing and gave me a black eye. Something snapped. It hurt a lot, and I was suddenly furious and also very flexible. So I started just kicking. I kicked everything within kicking distance. Everyone got kicked. There was a bloody nose and a lot of surprise and confusion. I didn't stop kicking till the lunch lady came over and broke up the fight. The 3 boys were sent to the office and I was let go. At the time, I was a bit offended as I thought my damage was comparable. However, I was a girl and they were the boys. So I was off the hook. When I got home, my mom was furious and my dad proud. But rumors spread quickly and I became the girl that beat up the whole football team. Apparently they were all on a team or something, and for the rest of the time I lived in that town, no boy would ever date me. There were 3 of them. They bullied a girl to death. Years of targeting a girl and the school did nothing to step in. The last fateful night they were at a party and she was invited. When she got there they screamed and yelled at her, threw things at her, told her to go shoot herself in the head. They spit on her and threatened to finish the job if she didn't do it right herself. She went home, called so many of her friends, found her dad's revolver and shot herself. The girls who bullied her were seniors, and it was just a month before graduation. Those girls were advised not to attend prom by administrators. They were shunned in their classes when they finally returned to school and were booed at graduation. Before that, they were honors girls who were leaders on the dance team and known to come from wealthy families. At our 20-year reunion, one of them showed up for a short time, but left quickly and quietly. The popular kid liked making fun of nerdy type kids. I was one of the victims, but I wasn't nerdy. I just looked like I was because I had glasses and longish hair that covered my forehead. You know the style I'm talking about anyway. During gym class in a game of dodgeball, he found the perfect opportunity to take my pants and pull it down to give everyone a good laugh. Instead, he accidentally pulled my pants and underwear down, showing my dick on full display. The entire class just stopped in a wave of shock and silence. While the popular guy was smiling, I yanked my pants and underwear up and ran away in shame. I didn't stop until I got to my locker. I then sat down in front of it and the tears just flowed like a river. Some of my friends came to check up on me and gave me sympathy hugs. We went back to the gym, me still tearing up a little. I was expecting everyone to laugh at me when I entered, but instead everyone was yelling and screaming at the popular guy. The gym teacher was sitting in his office, still in disbelief, I guess. When the class was over, he was immediately sent to the office, and he was put in in-school suspension. For a week after that, he had no friends, no popularity, no nothing, while I gained friends and popularity and even some gifts. To make me feel better, to this day he still has no friends or anything, and the class promised to never speak of that day again. Back in HS, I was the geeky kid that most of my more privileged peers made fun of. After all, they came from rich families, played soccer, etc. I wore baggy hand-me-down clothes. None of them had any idea my father was a steel worker and that I helped him on my days off. I was a beast under those ill-fitted clothes. As an elective, I took weightlifting with all the real jocks, the guys hoping for athletic scholarships. This was a 3A school. They liked me because I would spot them properly and always give 110%. Cue me getting into an argument with blonde-haired, entitled popular soccer kid. He decides to showboat and shove me during lunch. Except I don't budge, and he just falls flat on his as now people are looking. He's enraged. He leaps up and obviously wants to fight. And there are suddenly 3 massive football linemen standing next to me. They look at me. Look at him. You want us to fuck him up? My name, me, no. Coach X will bench you. Popular. Soccer kid turned as white as a sheet. He never as much as looked me in the eyes again and was never really taken seriously again. He became something of a laughing stock didn't make me any more popular unfortunately. Shoved his fingers in his ears during sex ed in year 3, earning him the nickname Bushman or simply Bush sometimes, because he was adamant that his parents found him in a bush he grew up to be a nasty piece of work and even challenged me to a fight. When I accepted he kept on asking me if I was sure and if I knew he was a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He wasn't. And that he had killed before. He hadn't. We fought in the bike shed after school where he pinned me to a wall and pretended to punch me while warning me that he would punch me for real. I ended up just going under his arm and hitting him in the lower back. To my surprise, he fell down to the ground from that, and, in a moment that I'm unable to call my proudest, I bent down, said every profanity my 13-year-old self knew, and punched him square in the nose. He was off school for the next 3 or 4 weeks with a broken nose, while I was off suspended for breaking it, and yet he still managed to convince the school that he beat the shit out of me. To this day most of the students of my old school believe that he broke my various bones TLDR. He didn't believe in coitus and wound up with a broken nose. Still convinced the whole school it was I whose bones had been broken. Me, a kid was kind of popular with the new ones at secondary school. One of those kids was my friend. Important later. He'd buy them stuff and be their friend. I was included in that list for a few months before he asked me to be his girlfriend, and when I said no, asked me for nudes. My dad saw it and asked me to screenshot that and send it to him and my mom. It was chat and he was nearby. He reacted almost like my mom did when a kid in another school broke my nose. I did. The boy got scolded and I got free meme material. Fast forward a year, my now best friend enters the school and that kid practically pounces on the chance to be her friend. I was already her friend, so the kid had to befriend me again. Fast forward another month, I was at lunch, waiting for the extra activities to start when that kid approaches me and says, "Don't show friend the screenshot." I was a great friend and showed it to her anyways. She laughed her ass off. Another fast forward, this time 3 months, and the kid stopped being our friend and teases the girl for being a lesbian. When he leaves, this conversation ensues. Me, I'm about to ruin his rep friend. What stops you? Me, you're right. Hey thy, fake name, look at this screenshot. Another one who laughed his ass off. Just that this time he borrows my phone to show the screenshot to more kids that died laughing too. Then I showed it to the girls that were chatting nearby and they died as well. They called that kid pervert for months. Edit, fixed some errors. She got caught freshman year of high school sneaking into her house late at night after drinking at a party and told her parents she was wrapped. The guy almost got in serious trouble before everyone realized she made it up. Unclear if she admitted it or her story fell apart. That whole crew of popular kids were all friends, so they fully stopped hanging out with her. Fast forward a couple years and she's now friends with a lot of my friends and we all start hanging out a lot more. One guy we all really liked had a thing with her early in high school, so after senior prom she got drunk and proudly told this guy that she made him because nobody would have known him if she wasn't interested in him. We were all like we all knew him already and he's the best. A couple things like that happened after that where it just became clear she was a really selfish person, and once we got to college we just lost touch with her. I think she's married now, lol. I've got a good one of something that didn't happen to a single person, but a whole clique. The mean girls. At my old school, I was bullied by faking everyone except my friends and one of my exes. The other one was salty I broke up with him and went r/guys in me when I broke up with his clingy ass. Homs did they fuck with that ruined their rep? Me. Well, my mom, to be more specific. Keep in mind this happened from 6th to the beginning of 8th grade. I was bullied daily for any fucking reasoning. The book, wearing a llama sweater. Oh, how ugly. Wearing professional clothes. You look like the ELA teacher. Sheet like that. That faked me up. These girls always seemed like they were nice, but they were faking brutal. But I would get my revenge. Since I've never owned a phone, my mom and dad don't have the money to buy one for me. I never was able to record this sheet. but my closest friend, I'll call her Anna. Anna had a phone and was always with me considering all our classes were together. Whenever these beaches started in on me again, she would record it. And soon, by the end of 7th grade, her phone was full of all the times they picked on and bullied me. She waited till the first 3 days of 8th grade before doing anything, because this was when shit got real. Here's what happened basically. I was in the bathroom, trying to wash my hands, but since Mean Girl Queen stuff was in it, I had to move it. When the other girls told me not to touch, or even look at it, I decided to be a bitch to them, and nudge her stuff with my foot. Next thing I know, this girl comes out, and bitch smacks me to the floor, and my glasses fall off. I stand up, shook because I've never been in a fight, and I swing at her by grabbing the top of her head and throwing her to the ground. She smacked me 3 times before I ran out, and I had to go to the office with Anna to call mom and tell her I was in a fight. Considering it was the end of the day, she came rolling in. Pissed. I explained what happened, and I saw something outside the office that still made me pissed off till this day. Those bitches were telling the cops I assaulted them all. We have cops in that school. They were trying to get me arrested. That's when I snapped and said, "Principal, how about we go to the office for a minute?" Mom, Anna, come on. So we went into his office, where Anna shows him all the evidence of them brutally picking on me and bullying me into tears from the past 2 years. And we knew all the girls by name. Anna got suspended for recording without consent. Man, when the fuck, I got suspended for fighting. Even though they hit me first. But Anna posted the video clips all over the social medias that those kids were on. Although she did take it down, it was up long enough for most of the grade to see what they did to me. Those girls were destroyed. They all were suspended. I think one was expelled, and my mom threatened to sue the entire fucking district because this abuse sheet happened with my brother at the high school. He's epileptic, and kids were using their phones to try and trigger a seizure, plus they always beat him. So he went into online school and is just about to go back to public school with me for high school this year. So the school took action against the girls, who all were suspended, and when they came back, they were more hated than me. They had bullied me as far as to me and my friends exposing them. And my mom managed to get them suspended. I got transferred to an amazing new school where people treated me like I was an actual human being, and didn't get this Reddit story from them. Calm as a beach. Mean girls. The faked up thing is that even if I'm away from that situation, I always have my guard up in case someone messed with me. My friends assure me no one's gonna hurt me and that I'm safe there, but I still don't care because I've been royally faked up by those beaches, where now I find it hard to trust people. Now I'm starting to ease up, but I'm never gonna forget the looks on their faces when they heard that we exposed them. They were so shook that my friend had recorded everything that some of them actually cried and tried apologizing. So all I said was, "You think sorry is just gonna fix 2 years of mental scarring? Get the fuck out of my face with your cheap as $2 hair dye." On the way out I looked back with Anna. We give Anna a ride home and I flipped them the bird. God, that felt faking awesome. TDLR. Over a point of 3 years a clique of mean girls bullied me. My friend records it all and exposed them. They get suspended and their reputation destroyed, and I get transferred into a new school with amazing new friends. Also sorry it's super long, but this was a long story. And now I'm ready to go into high school and I feel free as a bird. This is gonna be a bit touchy, so to clarify, I do not support bullying/targeting of special needs kids, and I don't wanna try to sound like I'm singling a special needs kid out. Now, we had a kid who was special needs, but also knew he was special needs, and got away with a ton of shit by playing that card whenever teachers got involved. I think the grossest example is there was a time in the bathrooms where he was peeing on people's shoes under the stall walls cause he thought it was funny, and when a teacher was informed he threw himself on the ground crying and thrashing around. Cocky little bastard actually threw a grin and a wink at the kid who reported him as the teachers helped him up and helped him walk away from what I was told peeing on people's shoes under stalls, using his status as special needs to try to strong arm his way into getting what he wanted, trying to start fights and throwing punches at people, only to have the student get in trouble if they retaliated/defended themselves. etc. Lots of sheet point. Of course then the school got in trouble for discrimination against special needs. When teachers started getting concerned, no one wanted to be around him. I actually have a story for this. So I was going to rural high school in Georgia, and this one extremely popular guy, we shall call Tom. Well, Tom was popular for playing baseball, football, and with women. I played on the baseball team with him, and he was just meathead jock, that when you got to know him really he was very off-putting. He didn't really have any close friends for that reason. Well, one day senior year he decided to sleep with a girl, and gave her an standard on purpose. I don't remember what it was, but he did it intentionally. We know because he bragged about it. Well, the girl tried to turn Tom in for it, but the adults didn't believe her, saying Tom probably didn't know. Funny thing was, all the kids at school immediately ostracized him, and the entire baseball team except for Tom went to the coach to say something. He finally got into trouble, and one day he just wasn't in school anymore. Not really a popular to unpopular story, but one that definitely took them down a few pegs. This happened in high school, and to get an idea of the guy, he played hockey, and that included everything that came with it. He is an egotistical pretentious dick who has literally stated out loud, "It's fine if I break the law, my dad can bail us out." His dad was the captain of the local police at the time, and I think still is. And then there's me, a nerdy guy involved in the band and musical theater, who didn't really hit puberty until a year before this story takes place, so I was short and skinny to say the least point. So this kid shared a grade 11 chemistry class with me, and he had been annoying the entire time, constantly talking over the teacher to his friends, cheating off other people on tests and quizzes, etc. One day he was playing on his phone under his desk, and the teacher noticed. She called him out and stated that no one just looks down there and smiles. Having been fed up with this kid's antics, commented, "It's funny how someone would be smiling so much looking at something so small." As soon as I said that, the class lost it, and my stomach twisted, expecting a retort or a fist to back of my head, but nothing came. Having been insulted by one of the least popular kids in our grade and him doing nothing about it definitely hurt his ego and popularity. Eventually people started to realize he was a dick and not hang out with him. This may not count, or maybe it counts and then some. You decide. The most popular kid in school was loved to a disgusting level. Kids adored him, teachers fought over who would get to have him in class, he was always surrounded by people. I mean, he was hot sheet. There's never been a kid in your school as popular as he was in ours. And his dream, he often said, was to one day return to his alma mater as an English teacher. He said it with sparkle in his eyes and joy in his heart. Disgusting. He graduates with honors, and does what he said he would do. He went to college to be an English teacher. He goes into our high school, asks for a job, and is naturally hired on the spot. Everything is going great. Until it's not. Turns out, popular kid turned popular adult was a little bit of a pervert. His kids were taking a test one day, and this girl finishes, and walks up to set hers on his desk. It's worth noting that he told them not to do that, to just sit quietly until everyone was done. When she does, he's watching porn on his phone, and is exposed under his desk. He lasted 4 years as a teacher, fired that day, becomes the laughing stock of the school he once coated with sunshine and glitter, and now everyone hates him. There was this one girl I knew for a long time who I thought deserved her popularity. She was kind, giving, funny, and smart, the perfect package. She transferred to another school around 5th grade and I didn't see her until I also ended up there at 8th grade. She was still the same girl, just as popular, just as perfect, but something felt different, and I was right. The school had a subway delivery system where parents could put in money to an account and use it to pay for their kids' lunch. That would also be delivered to the cafeteria. At some point, parents started complaining about money going missing from the account, and it turned out that the girl was stealing her friend's account info and using their parents' money to pay for her lunches behind their backs. She was caught in the act one day on a supposed bathroom break. The school was very small, so news spread within 2 days. She lost the trust and respect of her friends, classmates, teachers, and the school. She was suspended, and the whole subway system had to be remodeled because of it. The final blow was when a classmate found her social media that had tons of posts about her doing weed and practically worshipping it. She was only in 8th grade. She never came back. I don't know if 1st grade counts, but he had a lot of friends. He found out that I had to take special education classes for reading and spelling. But despite that, the teacher said I was great with art and telling stories. He would whisper slurs such as the R word, stupid, and idiot. I told the teachers every time, but she said to not pay attention to him if he keeps doing it. We all know that doesn't work. Halloween day came and it was recess. The monitor blew her whistle for all of us to line up. I slid down the slide one last time, and who was at the bottom waiting for me? He was getting ready to call me a name, but I took off before he could say anything. Last thing I remember was waking up next to the swing set with blood on the ground next to me, and my head and mouth hurt so much I started to cry very loudly. I was took the nurse office and my adult top front teeth fell out. My forehead had a huge lump. My school bus driver was there in the office and she took me home. My father got off early to take me to get my teeth back in and had braces for a short period of time to keep them in. Came back to school for a short visit and to show off my cool new braces. I got a lot of ooze and ass. My bully said that he was sorry for pushing me into the swing set. His friends didn't talk much to him or played with him for the rest of the year because of that nightmare. I have issues remembering important things, don't like things being in my face, and it was a lot more hard to read and spell. And still do today. Have issues of reading and spelling. And for anyone that asks, no, he didn't get into trouble. There was one kid in my middle school who always show off in front of girls, but when he was with one boy, he would beat the kid up and steal the valuables. One day, he was doing his usual beating and stealing stuff. He forgot that it was lunchtime. During lunchtime, there were what they called periods, and there were 3 of them in total. During the periods, teachers were allowed to use the students' restroom. He was late for his 4th period. Class, he was in the 2nd period. I was in the 3rd period. When I went to take a piss, I witnessed my math teacher, we'll call him Mr. Big Eye, cause he works out, restraining the bully. And what does the bully do? He resists against Mr. Buggy. He was kicking, backfisting, headbutting, you name it. The principal heard the commotion and they managed to take him to the office. He was later expelled. That day rumors spread that the reason why he was bullying so much was that because he was in a gang, and how he managed to attend the school was that the gang bribed the school board $10 million. We never heard from him again. Believe it or not, I was part of the popular crew in high school. So one of the guys in the GRP was pretty boy ladies man, all the females like the guy. So one day we were in the school store, this nice looking female walks up to him and she says to have, are we still on for Tuesday? And he was like yeah. She walks away and I turn to him and says no way. He says yep. Well, that was a Monday. I got suspended on Tuesday because of I was tardy to school too many times. So when I came back Wednesday, everybody was acting weird in school. Apparently the guy had rapped the chick on Tuesday. When I was told that story, I was like no way. She told him to come over on Tuesday. How did he rap her? The catch-22 is one of my closest friends. That was his cousin that got rapped. The girl's family came up to the school trying to fight him and all the other stuff, but they couldn't find them. So a couple days later the dude's lawyer called me and asked me to testify that part of the story, and I stayed out of it because I didn't want to get in the middle of it. Plus, that was my boy's cousin. The catch-33 is 3 years later he ended up going to jail for sexual assault on another chick in college. My ex was somewhat popular. Hard to explain, I guess. No one didn't like him. Everyone said hello to him. But if you ever met him, you wouldn't exactly expect him to be popular. For starters, he smoked so obviously in high school that equates to being cool and popular. Anyway, I started dating this kid. Thought everything would be chill and fine. He didn't seem to have a bad bone in his body. Wrong. He could never compliment me or call me pretty, not like I demanded it, but it's nice every once in a while. Instead he would call me a dyke or a refugee or the N-word. I'm white, so what? He would show me all the girls snapping him saying how they all wanted to sleep with him or suck his dick, I guess to scare me. Show me how lucky I was to have him. I don't know. Never spent more than $10 on me in our entire relationship, and the kicker for most girls, and actually occasionally boys who found out, was that he absolutely would never go down on me. Not that I have poor hygiene or anything like that. He simply wouldn't even care to touch me. It only mattered if he got off. Oh, and he was racist and homophobic. Told me my one friend was the type of kids that need the effagotry beaten out of them, and called his own friends the same names/insults too. Told his friend to stop being such a monkey. So, when people asked why we broke up, because I guess we were a hot, unexpected item, I told them all those red flags about him, and how he instead broke up with me because of my music taste. And now some people can ridicule me for telling anyone, but this kid deserved a swift kick to his ego. And that delivered it. His friends dropped him immediately after he threw this giant bash at his house. He integrated himself into a colored, I don't know the proper terminology, friend group I guess, until they caught wind of his racist tendencies, or saw it for themselves. TLDR, my ex was popular because had stoner dudes until he dated me, treated me like shit, and when everyone asked why we broke up, I basically explained that he was racist and homophobic, among other things. She was a massive attention seeker. It started when we were 6 and shared a backyard. Our parents were friends, and thus I was over at her house a lot. I was, and still am, extremely shy, and struggled to make other friends besides her. She could make you feel like the center of attention, unless there was someone around with more social influence. At parties her parents threw, I was suddenly ignored in favor of spending time with kids 1 or 2 years older. Finally, my family moved, and I got new friends that don't forget about me at the drop of a hat, and I kind of forgot about her until high school. Point being, a freshman with sophomore, junior and even some senior friends made her extremely popular, but she never made any connections with other kids in our grade, and ended up ignoring the friends she had made in middle school, burning those bridges. Junior year, most of her friends had either graduated or had suddenly become too overwhelmed with the stress of their final year of high school to hang out with her. Now, she was scrambling to find a group of kids in our grade to hang out with, which was probably a struggle seeing as how the rest of us had found our groups by this point. It's going to be our senior year this year, and you can already tell that the group she latched onto is subtly trying to cut ties with her. Yikes, that's rough, buddy. TLDR. Girl ignores and cuts ties with kids her own age in favor of hanging out with the older kids. Once they all graduate, she's left stranded. Not the most popular student, but the most popular teacher went downhill almost overnight during my senior year. So one of my school's teachers was placed completely in charge of fundraising and budgeting/spending for the entire school's social events, school dances, graduation ceremonies, etc. She'd been doing it nearly 20 years by the time I graduated, and was paid extra for her work. Like I said, she was the most popular teacher in the school. Everyone liked her. Not long after I graduated, it was discovered that she had been embezzling money almost the entire time she had been doing this work. They found out she'd squirreled away somewhere in the ballpark of $50k over the years, and that's just what they were aware of. It may have been more. This was money meant for student activities that they never received. She was stealing directly from the students. It pissed off the entire student body, and of course the school board was furious. Not sure whatever happened to her though. I heard she quit from the school and left town before charges were filed. Popularity is so fragile in high school, it's honestly weird. I was not popular in high school. To be honest, a lot of people didn't like me, based on reputation alone. I was big into music and band, and I also worked a lot. The other girls in band didn't like me, mainly because of my boyfriend at the time. He was neighbors with one of the girls in band and she hated that we dated. They all had friends in different social groups, and apparently didn't like me. I didn't even know until my senior year, when I started to branch out socially by joining other teams. The amount of times I hear "you are nothing like what Ziz said you were like" was astounding, especially considering these girls were super nice to me, and I was hanging out with them when I wasn't working. I moved back to my hometown, and my best friend from since I was 12 lives here too. Her oldest is older than mine, and a lot of people have asked her why she is friends with me, that I have never had any contact with at all. purely because of the impression they had of me from those girls that didn't like me but acted like they did. It's crazy. My friend had a party a few years ago where she invited her other mom friends and they all told her that I was nothing like they imagined me to be. It is really odd to hear about now from people as I'm back home and my kids are in school or activities with other people who heard of me and had a hard time reconciling what they remember and how I'm now. For the first 2 years of high school, me and this one girl were best friends. We could both be considered popular, I guess. I was just a person who talked to most everyone, and I enjoyed helping people out, etc. She was nice at first, but things went downhill after the first semester of 10th grade. We were together all the time and I really enjoyed her company. We even eventually dated, but that's where things went wrong. I found out how self-centered and manipulative she was when she talked about dating other people while we were dating, and that she's having religious trouble while dating me. I'm biologically a girl, so yeah. That second part would make sense until you realize that she asked me out. And it wasn't a testing the water asking out. It was a full-on I want to date you with very little prior mention of religion. She told me that the religious stuff didn't bother her. She also became despondent while we were together, fully knowing that I didn't do anything wrong and that this would give me a lot of anxiety, giving her a lot of power. Then she basically blamed the relationship on me. I broke up with her after a month and, being the chill and forgiving person I am, I said that we can still be friends. And that made the last semester of 10th grade pretty awesome cause we got even closer. Then summer hit. I've said it on other posts, but I have a dissociative disorder and my main trigger just happens to be my brother. I think something bad happened because the next thing I know it's 3 months later and school is back. I shrug it off with a time really does fly, doesn't it? And I'm met with a very angry friend. Whoever was fronting before didn't talk to my friend that summer because they didn't like how she treated us. She was very manipulative and somehow she was the popular kid while being one of the most notorious people at school for talking garbage. And this really showed when she turned the grade against me. I mean the whole grade, because there are like around 50 people per grade in my high school. I tried explaining my condition to her, but she was stubborn and wanted conflict. When I walked into the school, I was shunned by everyone. No one cared about my side of the argument because the queen had already given her input and nobody dared to upset her. This was terrifying. For a month and a half or so, I thought my social life was over for high school. I'm a very anxious and non-confrontational person, so it was hard for me to even consider telling anyone what happened. Then, I worked up some courage and told a couple people about what really happened, admitting that ignoring wasn't the best course of action because I didn't want them to know about the whole disorder thing, while following up with how brick walls don't exactly listen. I had to apologize to her, even though I didn't do anything wrong, and I became friends with her again after this with every intention of not talking after high school, but I treated her genuinely well. I didn't want to stoop to her level. We just graduated, and because of all of the manipulative things that she's done, no one's talked to her for a while. She hasn't tried talking to me, so I don't feel like I need to explain my absence. I hope that she does well in life, but I also hope she knows how much she hurt the people who she was fake friends with. TLDR, my best friend turned into my worst nightmare and simultaneously revealed who she really was to the whole grade. By the end of high school, no one wanted to be her friend. I don't know if he was popular or not, but there's a guy who goes to the local college. Long story short, he and a friend rapped 2 or 3 girls at a party in high school. They drugged the girls, rapped them, then took their underwear. The legal system here sucks, and so they all graduated, and he ended up going to college because he was a volunteer for the police. Charges were pressed, victims were manipulated, and he plus friend were found guilty. However, this is Michigan. He got 90 days in county jail followed by 2 years probation for rap. He only served it on the weekends so it wouldn't interfere with his academic career. Everyone hates him. The girls in college, myself included, carry protective measures at all times, and his presence there makes us extremely uncomfortable. Luckily he's in a different building, but just the fact that he got away with it when there was evidence makes me afraid for the future. He'll do it again. I just hope that girl can get away. As far as I know, he's not very well received anymore. Also, might I add that has one of 5 rapists to be charged in the past 5 years. This town has a pop of about 1,000. The judge that handled all of the cases has recently been let go, and our sheriff is being charged with a felony. Small town Michigan life is great. This actually happened to me. I wasn't the popular kid, but I was on both sides of the spectrum. I was friends with the popular kids, jocks, cheerleaders, etc. And I was also friends with the outcasts, kids who skipped school, sat alone at lunch, did drugs, sold drugs, etc. So I was well liked by everyone, which was a rarity, because usually if you were friends with one side you couldn't be friends with the other, for whatever arbitrary reason. In 9th grade I wasn't paying attention while walking back to my seat and I pulled on my chair. The girl next to me was in the seat and she fell out of it and rammed her head into the desk. And she laid on the floor crying while everyone, including myself, was sitting in stunned silence. I got sent to the office and tried to explain that I wasn't paying attention and it was an accident, but he wasn't having it. This was near the end of the year anyway, but I spent the rest of the year getting ignored by pretty much everyone except for my best friend at the time, and funnily enough the girl I accidentally sent face first into a desk. The beginning of the next year was also kinda iffy, but the girl actually liked me and she asked me out. Once we started dating everyone kinda realized I really didn't mean to do it, so I was pretty much back to where I was before all of that happened. No one bullied me for it or anything, but it was definitely a strange thing to witness everyone kinda turn their head when you walk into a room. You definitely learn who your friends are in that situation, lol. Luckily that was the most embarrassing thing that happened to me in high school, besides just how I looked in general mayo. I kind of have the opposite story. My story. Oh, how the unpopular kid became the popular kid. So, I was homeschooled 6th 12th grade, but I went to public elementary school, and I was the most bullied kid in both public elementary schools I attended. The first school, K 3rd grade, almost everyone in my grade bullied me, or at least occasionally took a stab at me. Pretty much anyone who didn't outright bully me would just ignore me and completely ostracize me. In kindergarten, I had one friend, a fellow outcast. I was one of the only kids in this school for age kids and severely disabled, blind, deaf, severe Down syndrome, wheelchair bound, kids who had an invisible disability, high functioning autism, severe ADHD, and a couple of others, and she was one of the only black kids. Her name was Ashana and we were very close, but she moved far away at the end of the year and I never saw her again. After that, kids who had already been mean got meaner and were joined by more meaners. By the end of 1st grade, I was alone, bullied by probably 50 different kids, friendless, and at the time, my mother, who had always been in bad health, was especially sick, having to spend days in bed out of the average week, and in need of another knee surgery. Because I was young, I didn't understand that she just had a variety of very painful chronic conditions and had the same life expectancy as most. I thought if I told her, she would get really stressed, come down with another bout of her sickness, and then die. So, I told no one in my family, because my family was very close-knit, and since I had no friends, I would just cry out to Jesus in private. My faith grew really strong, and I found a kind of inner joy not based on circumstances that I still carry today, giving me the ability to stay positive, joyful, and hopeful, no matter what came my way. To be clear, the reason people bullied me was because I was incredibly weird, autism mostly, combined insane levels of hyperactivity, no impulse control, and being a really bright and creative kid, a star student, a teacher's pet, a goody two shoes, and I was a really attractive kid, not as much now, but I'm okay. I was super nice to everyone, just really blunt with very few social skills. Anyway, in 4th grade my family moved out to the countryside and I began at a new school. To give an idea of the kind of school it was so overcrowded that teachers were teaching in dozens of mobile homes out in the parking lot because there weren't enough classrooms or enough money to upgrade the school. My siblings and I had the 3 highest IQs in the entire school by a wide margin. Of course, myself and my siblings all had IQs in the 130s, except my younger brother I think his was closer to the 140s. The kind of students at this school were mostly trailer park kids. Nothing wrong with that, but a lot of them were a bit, well, trashy. Farmers' kids, who were usually either the best of the bunch or horrible, and maybe a 6 or 12 kids per grade. There were roughly 100 minus 120 kids in my grade, who came from a super rich street of extravagant mansions nearby, as well as a few of them coming from wealthy horse farms. These kids were generally very snubby, and I went to a birthday party for one of them. Pretty much the whole grade was invited, and she was getting $250, $300, $400 from various aunts, uncles, and relatives. She was actually the only one who was nice to me. She moved away shortly thereafter. Anyway, I was again friendless and treated like trash at this school, but I remember being excited because only 35 to 45 kids bullied me personally and daily. Everyone else just bullied me generally. Around this time I finally told my family what was going on, and as it got worse and worse, my mum, who had always wanted to homeschool me, pulled me out of school. Okay, fast forward 6 or 7 years. I'm 18 years old. I have graduated high school with a nearly 4.0 GPA and got a 30 on the act. I got into the college of my choice, a very historic state university renowned for training the kind of profession I want. Not only do so get into the school, not crazy hard, but I get into the honors college, which is significantly harder. I'm pursuing 2 different degrees, have grown up really not bad looking. I'm not exactly gorgeous, but I get told I'm beautiful and should be a model a lot, and the lowest anyone has rated me was a 7.5, and I mostly get rated the 8th of May 10. Don't ask me why, my friends just like to rate me. On top of that, years of training have given me adequate social skills and the ability to put myself out there and talk to anyone. Although I still had deep insecurities, I was able to project insane amounts of confidence, and the fact that I was 5 feet 10, often wore heels, and dressed fashionably probably helped, because even though I cared deeply about what people thought, all those years of being hated, and then followed by years of horrible loneliness before finally making some real friends in high school, had taught me to not want to change a thing about myself, because people were going to judge me, no matter what I did, so I might as well be my pure, unadulterated self, and have fun in life, the non-sinful, wild, homeschooler kind. I was able to quickly make at least a dozen friends, and knew pretty much everyone on campus who I had any kind of contact with. I was on good terms with pretty much everyone, well liked, surrounded by friends, loved by my teachers, as well as being pretty, and an honors student. I was as close as it comes to popular in college. Just to add, I also had developed a very unique sense of style that some people thought was super fashionable, flattering, and beautiful, and less people thought was a little strange. And since I walked with confidence and looked people in the eye as walked by, I got stared at a lot and had the confidence boost of guys constantly checking me out. Now, I was somewhat surprised to find that almost no kids I knew in elementary school seemed to attend this major state university. But, a couple weeks after starting there, I found out my worst bully from elementary school, a girl I will call Helen, was attending the same college as me. This girl had made my life miserable in elementary school, not only by outright bullying me, but often bullying me in a very psychological, mind games, manipulative kind of the way that did me some serious damage. She had always been jealous of my slim figure and nice lips and pretty face, mostly the slimness and my lips. I don't know why, as she had always had weight issues and a lot on insecurities. She was also jealous of my academic standing, I think. Anyway, she always did her best to be fashionable and have great makeup in elementary school, and she was fashionable and did have great makeup. She also had a really rare and pretty hair color, even if her hair was a bit thin. But since then, it looked like she had given up. She was almost morbidly obese and had stopped caring about fashion or makeup, which she loved so much. She now pretty much always wore baggy t-shirts and running shorts and barely did her hair or makeup. She was still very petty and mean, and as soon as she saw me and saw that I was popular and successful and an honors student, she was so jealous. She looked enraged by my success and all, and she would stare daggers through me whenever we were in the same room. At first, I felt bad for her, but also took a wee bit of pleasure in seeing this girl who had done me so much damage be so incredibly jealous of me. Now, I just mostly feel bad for her. She is consumed by jealousy and hate whenever she sees me, and I just wish she could let it go and be happier. I always try to be kind to her and say hi and ask her how her classes are going whenever I see her, but it's hard. But, hey, I hope maybe she's find a better way someday. We are still young. And as for me, I have the sweet reward of going from being alone and tormented to beloved, popular, successful, and surrounded by friends. Still no boyfriend yet, but I'm not in a rush. Okay, short version. I did a longer version earlier. This story is the opposite. This my story of how the super unpopular bullied girl ended up being popular. Background info that's important. I'm high functioning autistic, severely ADHD, very bright / gifted. I'm fairly attractive, based on what others tell me, probably a 8.5 to 9.5. I project insane confidence, even if I don't feel that way fully, which is helped by the fact that I'm tall, decently in shape, and dress very uniquely / fashionably. I'm really crazy, but usually in a good way. I was homeschooled 6th 12th grade, but went to public school in elementary school, and in addition to being bullied badly by 75% of my grade as an elementary school student, and ostracized by the others, I also had a very bad bully who was manipulative, and played mind games, and did a decent amount of psychological damage to me, Helen. Also, I'm an honors student at a major, historic, state university. Okay, so I was really badly bullied in elementary school. Treated like trash, ostracized, friendless. I started homeschooling in 6th grade, developed some social skills, and eventually made some friends in high school. I get to college and I'm an honors student, attractive, successful, and confident. I make lots of friends, I know lots of people, and I'm well liked and lots of people want to talk to me / be my friend. I get checked out by boys all the time and people stare at me a lot. I'm well known, well liked, and the closest it comes to popular in college. Meanwhile, my worst bully from elementary school, we'll call her Helen, is at my school. It is enraged and extremely jealous of me. She's only got a small band of very petty, fake seeming friends, and has stopped caring about her appearance, even though fashion and makeup used to be very important to her. She is now almost morbidly obese and now only wears baggy t-shirts and running shorts. I feel sorry for her, so I try to be kind to her / be her friend, but she is consumed by her jealously. Meanwhile, I hope and pray for her to heal and let go of her hate, but I'm living my best life and have gotten the chance to popular, well liked, surrounded by true friends who adore me, and happy. Reading this, I just realized my school group was a Mafia. We would do a lot of wild shit, but it never got out of the circle. We had parties with horse at like 14, and would go to bars and clubs with fake kids. This fucked up my college experience though. You can hardly do crazier shit at it. I remembered something funny. We were pretty tight, and we just didn't call anyone to our stuff, because we couldn't have anyone snitching. Or anyone being a fool who couldn't handle themselves. It's the last year of high school. A new guy enters the school and we called him for a party. In my country we make a pre-party. Party like a gathering to drink and stuff. He got wasted on the pre-party too hard, and on the party, in trance he started to not feel well, and he to call for an ambulance on the entrance of the party. The ticket was like 200 something. He immediately became a joke. He was never popular though. On the other hand, we had a very nerd looking guy join at the same year, and I switched sits a lot in class. And one day I was sitting near him. There was a really annoying kid who wouldn't shut up. That really nerd looking guy took a pencil and put a hole into the guy's leg with it. I thought it was really funny, lol. I know it's kinda wrong, but oh well. And I was like, hey, that nerd looking guy is kinda crazy, let's bring him to a party. At the party he kept calling people to snort coke. I was like, dude, you don't do that shit. A guy believed him. The nerd looking guy was actually insane when it came to drugs, and he was a rich kid. so he had a huge apartment for himself, like 200 meters, and some girls from other city of my class lived in the same complex. His apartment immediately became the after school gathering place and we used to smoke weed there and stuff all day. Those girls were pretty hot and I used to make out with one of them, so it was a really nice time lol. Also I'm kinda of a gym rat and eat a lot, and he wouldn't eat any food because he used to get paranoid from coke, so anything transgenic or with grains whatever that he mom bought he wouldn't eat. So I always had snacks and played Dota 2/make-out/smoke weed in his house for a year. We were all really respectful though and would take care of each other like family. If ever anyone got to high or anything we would take care of the guy girl. We also would never touch a girl that pass out or something like that, which was common, or record any kind of sex or whatever. That's why we couldn't have any fool around. A friend of mine had a heart attack because of a bad speed. We immediately took him to the hospital and everything, and he didn't suffer any sequel. He was like 14 at time. I never did any drug besides weed because of that experience. Oh, there was this guy that was theoretically a popular kid. Our school was very weird, so popularity wasn't based on the normal things. He was one of the Bible thumper kids for a long time. I actually met the kid at a church camp when I was 6, almost 8 years, before I started going to school with him. Anyway, he was a popular kid until he kinda fell off the rails and he treated his girlfriend like shit and started sending videos of him jerking off to many of the girls in school. First few people were just like, "Beach, what the fuck?" But after everyone figured out he was doing this to like 10 to 15 girls all at once, they practically exiled him. At this point the populars were starting to get a hold of some weed, so this guy tries to reclaim his popularity by doing the same. Except his mom was still very religious, and she did not approve of his decisions, and made it very known that he was going to be grounded for all of eternity. Everyone knew his mom. She was a coach at the school, helped with picture day, and was all around a lovely and very helpful woman at the school, but she could turn in a second into very angry mama bear, and no one would touch that kid with a 10-foot pole after that. Our high school president at the annual grade 12 male variety show. It's pretty much a Miss America pageant for a lot of the senior males, to put on a show for the school/community for some laughs and raise money for safe grad point. He came out on stage wearing nothing but a diaper and dancing to Sexy Back. I think he thought that the absurdity of it and the shock factor was going to make it the most hilarious thing that anyone's ever seen, but all he got a couple of nervous laughs and groans. Suddenly the lights go out, his music gets cut, and he gets dragged off stage by the teacher organizing the event. Nobody knew what was happening at the time. Fast forward to the next day at school, Buddy gets stripped of his presidency with about 3 weeks to go of school, and they had serious chats about cancelling the event for good for the upcoming years. Being in grade 11, my friends and I were all pissed that this one guy almost cost us our chance to participate the next year. People in his grade just shunned him completely. The popular girl, who was one of the students with the best grades in the entire year, got extremely upset with a teacher because she announced our student representative would be doing a speech to all students, teachers, and parents right before prom. The popular girl, let's call her Jennifer, really wanted to do the speech and threw a fit several times, some in front of us, some to different teachers, all very embarrassing, for a full week until a teacher told her, "Okay, you can do the speech." Prom comes, the student representative does the speech, and there's nothing Jennifer can do about it. Prom starts and she is furious. The teacher tells her, "Well, Jennifer, you can do the speech midway through prom. That's what I meant. Doesn't that sound good?" Jennifer was so happy. I think she thought it would be like a movie scene when the prom queen goes up to stage and everyone falls in love with her. When she starts the speech, it's the most boring thing in the world. No emotion, just a monotone voice and extremely repetitive. People aren't even listening to Jennifer, they just start talking to each other to the point nobody heard her finish and nobody clapped. Jennifer spent the following day complaining about it on Twitter and commenting on how bad other people's outfits and makeup were from the night before without giving actual names. Honestly, karma is a beach. I didn't have to think hard about this one point. There was this one girl that I went to school with from kindergarten to 8th grade. Let's call her PG for popular girl. I told a story about her on r/int it led people, but this story tops that one. She was extremely popular and well liked by both the students and the teachers. Her mom was a teacher, so that probably had something to do with it, but she just seemed really fake to my friends and PG presented herself as a goody two shoes, not like other girls. For a while I would say that I was probably her least favorite person at school, but then another girl, let's call her NK for new kid, moved to our school in 7th grade. To this day, I'm still not exactly sure why PG took such a disliking to NK, but if I had to guess, I would say it was probably because the boys now liked NK more than her after most of 8th grade was over. A good chunk of people in our grade were starting to see how fake she was and thought she was just annoying in general. I guess in PG's mind, she blamed NK and decided to do something. She FaceTimed NK's boyfriend. I'm aware that dating in 8th grade is stupid, but just go with it, and told him that NK was doing lap dances on the guys at our school dances. This was a lie, but for a while, NK's boyfriend believed it. After NK found out what had happened, she told everyone what PG did, and everyone started hating PG. I was totally ahead of the curve on that one point. Needless to say, she got a very muted applause at our 8th grade graduation, and was not missed. He went to juvie. I've always hated him, because he's the type to moan in a silent study hall or just disrupt a class in general, but he was popular and athletic. So I think it was sophomore year someone had called in a bomb threat and the school went on lockdown while they searched for it. I was on a trip with my mom, so this is all second-hand info. Apparently while they were searching for the bomb he starts making jokes with his buddies about how it was him and whatnot. But his teacher overheard and took it all literally and called in the principal and police. They all took it very seriously and searched all of his stuff. Since we live in a small town in the Midwest, hunting is a very common. I would hope you know where this is going. So they search his car and I believe they found at the very least a knife, if not more. So I think they decided to make an example of him and his behavior and sent him to juvie. He's back at school now and seems to be the same. Is still a bit popular with some of the other guys who like to make fun of teachers, but not nearly as social as he was before. The first thing that you should know is that my school is full of conformists and stereotypes, and among those cliches was, of course, the self-inflated ego thinks he's the new Takashi 6X99. You know what I'm talking about. Point anyways. About a year ago in middle school, this kid was basically the social status equivalent of what I just said. He had every stupid stereotypical girl at their hands and knees practically begging to date him, with an army of Logan Paul fans adhering to his every breath. Him and his goons tended to treat everyone like trash, and if you crossed his path you were almost guaranteed a beating or a bullying. It sucked, and everyone, even his loyal followers, seemed to secretly despise him. Point judging by his current lifestyle, I think we could all see the route he was taking, and it turns out he decided to heed his upcoming lifestyle a couple years early. It was common knowledge that he treated the females of our school, both teachers and students, like a piece of crap, but it still came as a surprise to everyone when the rumor had started that he, a 13-year-old kid, had exposed his genitalia to a fellow student. At first the accusations were labeled as propaganda by everyone other than the friends of the victim, but when more people started to come out about their own experiences with his sexual assault, things eventually got very serious when around 6 or 7 girls accurately accounted for a situation where he apparently exposed himself to them in a group FaceTime call on house party, and sure enough his empire came crashing down. I had a friend who was harassed by him, and according to her, he was supposedly investigated by the police and sentenced to some community service or correctional program. All that we really know collectively is that he left school for 2 months, and when he had come back everyone knew what he had done, but the worst part is he didn't change. Claims continued and his suspensions increased, all eerily to the pleasure of everyone with knowledge of what had happened. He hurt a lot of people, but it still sickens me a little that even some of my closest friends found joy from this occurrence. I still don't know what stance to take on the topic as to whether we should give him a chance to be forgiven or continue to label him as a 13-year-old sex offender. I just hope that nothing like this ever happens again and that good will prevail. A guy named Forbes acted nice to all the teachers and mean to all the kids that didn't worship him. He was very short and weak, but you couldn't fight back, because if you did you would get in trouble, because he was seen as an angel by all the adults. But one day, that all came crumbling down when a kid named Sean threw a rubber at his head while the teacher was away during class. Forbes, being the hothead he was, immediately charged him and shoved him to the ground. He started punching Sean in the face, but he didn't retaliate. Instead he screamed out in pain to get the teacher's attention. He succeeded, and she came running back to see what the fuss was. When she came back to the class hall she saw Forbes beating a defenseless and innocent student. The teacher shouted at the top of her lungs, which made Forbes freeze. He then looked up to see her with the angriest and most disappointed face I've ever seen. Then came the waterworks, straight from Forbes' eyes. Everybody in the class saw him for what he really was. Now he is a social outcast. He was suspended for 2 weeks and lost all his friends. They liked him for his toughness and had never seen him cry. But after they saw the sad display of human garbage, they left him. This was when I was in 11th grade and I went to an American high school that had over 2,000 students. My high school had an assembly, I forgot for what, that was split into two, so there was the first assembly and second assembly. I went to the first assembly, and all grades are there. The cheerleaders and football players were doing some cheer together that involved the cheerleaders to sit on the football player's leg after they kneel down. The football player's pants are white. The cheerleaders wear skirts. One of the cheerleaders, who was a grade higher than me, got her period and left a huge stain on a football player. It was a huge deal because half of the entire school saw, obviously. The second assembly found out because gossip. That was all the school talked about for that week. For the rest of the year, that was the most scandalous thing that went public because it was extremely embarrassing and it made her unpopular. He didn't necessarily become unpopular, but he lost a lot of popularity. In elementary school, this guy was so good, he played football with his high schooler brother and his football player friends, and was still one of the better players in the group. He started getting scouted by colleges in middle school, which was the only reason he was popular, because he didn't have many friends until people in my grade started bringing a football. You couldn't go a few days without hearing his name in the halls, and he was actually a pretty cool guy in middle school. In high school, though, he became a huge douchebag and did things like telling one of the nicest guys at school that he should dump his girlfriend of 3.5 years so he could experiment with other women because she wasn't that much of a catch. Once it hit my junior year, you would only hear his name mentioned the day of or after a football game and never anywhere else. I could see him go pro, but I feel like he might mess it up. I was the quiet kid of the class, just studied, played game, some cycling and nothing else. This popular guy comes to me just to get some fame, as everyone there was such mimester they thought quiet kids are the strongest and all that point. Then the popular kid continues to roast me. I just ignore and do math. As he saw that he wasn't getting much attention, he started to punch me. I was punched once. Okay, let it be. Was punched again. I will destroy his career if he does it again. The last time he punched me, it was truly the last time. I punched him hard in the stomach, dragged him towards a wall, grabbed his neck against the wall, and he wasn't touching the ground. After 10 seconds I saw everyone was watching me. Being an introvert, I flee from there while throwing the guy straight on the ground. He lost his popularity. I was about to gain some, so I told some people to help me for not making this situation spread like fire, and then that's it. I was the popular kid. There was another well-known clown in our school that was slightly annoying, but generally endearing, that most teachers and students got along with pretty well. I came to my locker one morning to grab my stuff for first period. I kept everything for that class in my locker because it was right next to the classroom itself, and the teacher was chill, so he let me just step to my locker if I needed anything during class, and found that everything was gone. My binder, my school supplies, and my backpack that I was pretty damn sure I left behind the other day. Turns out the resident clown spied my locker combination somehow and swiped my stuff before engulfing it all in gaudy pink paint, ruining my backpack. supplies, the picture of my recently deceased grandmother and I that was left inside the backpack, and the school issued textbooks that I was expected to pay for with my own money. Needless to say, I beat the ever-living shit out of him in the middle of history class and everybody started beaching at me for it and didn't let up, even when I explained my side of the story. I was suspended for 2 weeks, sent the bill for the textbooks, and dropped out of just about every social circle I was in damn near overnight. It took a year and a half before I got any sort of positive reputation back, and even then I had some teachers and students acting some type of way towards me and never got to where I used to be in the figurative food chain point. If I could go back to that day I wouldn't beat on him like I did, but the sheet he pulled was still screwed up and I'd absolutely roast his ass for it. He was into motocross and broke his pelvis during winter break in a motocross tournament. He was also well known for scraping by in every single class, so of course even though he only spent 3 days in the hospital he couldn't do his homework for the entirety of the 3 weeks of vacation. He also had just about everyone's contact info, except mine, but somehow my older sister's. And of course it was my homework he wanted to copy, so he texted my sister, who took my homeworks, and sent him pics. Then he proceeded to start bullying me on the bus the following semester, to give him my homework to copy every single day, and my sister not only refused to stand up for me, but beat me when my parents weren't home to hand my homework, so she could send him pics of it. We had like 5 7th classes together that year, which only made my situation worse. When my parents began to notice my grades drop, I stopped doing homework as a workaround. She tossed my ass under the bus and said I was having a relationship with him. I was only 13. My parents refused to believe my side of the story, that it's not true, made a fuss to the school. The kid walked scot-free. I was forced to switch all my classes around, and the only people to believe me were my teachers, but they would talk about the incident in front of my classmates, which made me as ostracized as him after the incident. But at least the other students my sister's lies of his relationship with me, and since I was the classic ugly AF beach in middle school he immediately lost his status. He moved another state over the following year, but I had to live with that scandal over my head through high school. And now those same people wonder why I moved 3,000 miles away to go to college. One guy at my high school was pretty well liked, charismatic, good with tech, etc. But he was a massive butthole. He had a massive ego, and was one of those nice in front of teachers, a total dong behind their backs sort of kid. Well anyway, his fame sort of went to his head, and over time his nice guy act started to slip. He was constantly getting told off for talking in class, missing homework, etc. The final straw came when he made a joke at the expense of a very well-liked girl. He would make jokes about students and teachers all the time, but this girl was way more popular than him. All I remember is him saying something, I can't remember what, then this girl starts crying and runs out of the room. Everyone looks at this kid, and he has a smug what did I do wrong face on. He showed his true colors that day. He still kept a few friends, but on Leavers Day he wasn't there, and no one really remembered that he wasn't there. No one missed his presence. I'm glad he got knocked down a peg after what he did to me. It's just one of those classic popular in middle school kids coming to high school. In middle school he was known for being really athletic, and for being a tad bit of a dick to anyone he didn't call friend, and at the time people thought was super cool. So much so that it was my fault, what he did to me. I'll get into what he did another time, if people want me to. Then came high school and all of a sudden there are people faster than him, and way too many other people for him to be really noticed anymore. And though he tried, the way our high school was set up, it was hard for him to do so. And even though I didn't want to forgive him, I will say his strive to still do better at sports despite the completion all of a sudden was impressive. But he never reclaimed his spot as far as I know. There was another person that comes to mind, but I think I'll save that one for now. He was this guy who was well liked but a bully and a sheethead. He had some beef over a girl with a different equally popular sheethead. He made a big deal about kicking his ass after 6th period or some shit, and bragged and talked shit and yada yada yada. So 6th period ends, and I got to witness Sheety Guy #1 walk up right behind an unknowing Sheety Guy #2 and just punched him in the back of his neck, knocking him out instantly. When he was finally allowed back in school, he was expecting everyone to think he was hard awesome sheet. But all of his friends shunned him, and he started getting messed with by people bigger than him constantly. Just for walking down the hall. Didn't hear from that kid for most of the rest of high school. I found out years later his parents refused to switch schools because he broke Sheety Kid #2's neck and wanted to teach him a lesson. Don't feel even a smidge of remorse for this guy, because I watched him physically bully a Hispanic girl a quarter of his size in pet, but never said anything. Made me feel a lot less guilty when he got knocked down 10 or 20 pegs with nowhere to go. Lol. Girls spreading rumors to every guy about her because they didn't like how popular she was. Even female teachers didn't like her. Male teachers did though. Every guy ended up liking her. Every girl hated her. And let's be all yeah, that attractive. Girls didn't like her and lied about her. Tried being like her. Got mad at and blamed her if their boyfriend liked her. Treated her like shit and then said she was the bad one somehow. It was so unbelievable how they treated her. She was the quiet shy girl, didn't do anything to be popular, didn't respond to anyone liking her. She was really smart, and I heard she was kinda badass, would get mad at us whole teachers no one else would. Had this look to her that no one else had. She had great reflexes, dodged a ball without even looking once. Very mysterious girl, just a lot to her that others wanted. And she was always a loner. No one else liked her. She seemed nice, but didn't open up at all. Her downfall. It got really rough, like a whole faking school knowing who she was when she didn't like attention. Shy girl. Sometimes she dropped out because of how shitty people treated her. I heard the popular girls, actual snobs pretending they're good, said some really awful lies about her because guys stopped liking them when they found out they were lying about her. The most popular girl now, only after her, started all the shit because her boyfriend liked her. I miss her. What happened to her wasn't right. The guy was ASB president and part of Avid Group. Super nice, handsome and a charismatic overall dude. Played football and was in honors classes. I should mention I went to a affluent high school. This kid, not the popular one, whose family owns a lumber company and had been based in the area for the last 100 years or so, threw a party in this huge faking mansion. 30 rooms, giant property. I think some 500 odd kids showed up. The place seemed like an old Greek party because there was people throwing up left and right and guys having sex with guys, girls having sex with girls. The pool became a skinny dipping only type of scene. The popular guy was taking body shots off some of his teammates and they're just throwing shit around. It was mayhem. But my friends and I left around 5 AM and that shit was still going strong. On Monday we all checked this sheet going viral on Facebook that he got arrested for rapping to girls, and his mugshot was on the local police station's Facebook page. He was expelled. Everyone that was associated with him quickly disowned him and said they never cold imagined it, and his reputation was smeared. About a year later the investigation had concluded that he couldn't have rapped them because some guy had recorded him leaving the party before the alleged time he had rapped the two girls, and not only that, but one of the family members of the girls didn't give the security footage of their own home when the girls walked into the house in the exact time frame of the girls were supposedly being rapped. Turns out they were both jealous of him getting into some school and they were both turned down, so they fabricated the story thinking people would just not talk to him, but the immediate family called the police and it all snowballed from there. The girls were both expelled, and the principal contacted the colleges they got into for the next year and they were both dropped from the schools. Kid's family sued both of them, and one who knows how much. I heard it was in the millions. The ex-popular kid never recovered, and just never went back to school. I saw him again about 3 years later, and dude was so different. Unkempt, gained weight, nowhere near as chatty as he was in high school. He would still get threats from people who were firm believers the girls didn't lie. Last I heard he moved to Australia 2 years ago. Just for context, there were multiple popular kids at my school, however I'm going to single it down to one, because he was the only one I knew at least a bit about. This guy was rather popular amongst the 8th graders of the middle school at the time. He was the casual jock, not beefy but the really lanky one that still played quite well. This guy was respected and had many friends, as well as was in a relationship. Keyword was. I must also mention the girl he was dating was a grade lower than him, making it quite difficult for them to actually resolve problems and talk it out when they had any, considering one of them had no access to a phone. The reason they became so unpopular was for a few reasons, not just one. This guy cheated on multiple tests of one of the most respected and liked teachers in the school. He was incredibly nice, but once he overheard he cheated he was absolutely furious and broken due to how much of a connection he had with the students. 2. He got caught up with the act of a student who pantsed somebody as a prank. However, it got both the jeans and boxers, which set a few people off. 3. This is likely most concerning as this guy not only had a girlfriend who he mainly had as a toy for certain needs, although he had a fair relationship either way, he decided it would be a good idea to enter illegal territory amongst a 6th grader. This was not spread amongst the teachers, although students backed the hell away for quite a while. I never really liked the guy, but I did think he could use some respect. Once this happened I don't think I can say the same. We haven't spoken since. TLDR. 8th grader mentally breaks a love teacher, got caught in a prank gone wrong, and sexted a 6th grader. The deterioration of his personality, and I'm not even sure why it happened. His name is James, and I met him in my sophomore year of high school at the new school I went to. When I met him, he was easily one of the most popular students in my sophomore class. He was a star of the football team, was in the Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps, JROTC, program in our school, and many of the girls found him good looking. He had a great personality, was very friendly, and seemed to like everyone. According to everyone else, he was just as popular in his freshman year, and he was the same way the center of attention, but in a good way, that seemingly everyone liked. When junior year came, he seemed to be more standoffish and antisocial. As the year went on, he wasn't the friendly, nice, and outgoing person anymore. When we got to our senior year, he pretty much had no friends, had no personality, was very rude and unfriendly. When I tried to talk to him, he would tell me to fuck off and just ignore me. He wasn't just like this to me, he was like this to seemingly everyone in our class. Back when we were 21 years old, 8 years ago, I saw him at a local bar/grill, and he was drinking alcohol alone. Just alone. I talked to him, and all he said was "yeah, I remember you," and kept giving me one-word responses as a way to get me to quit talking to him. He eventually just left when I was trying to talk to him. He didn't go to college and dropped out of the military. He would post Facebook statuses in his 20s with nobody commenting on them, and they all lacked any real substance. He would post stuff like "what a day" or "it's sunny outside" and other pointless statuses, and he would like his own statuses. He moved across the country, but he doesn't seem to be much different these days at the age of 29 years old, at least from what I can see on his Facebook. All he does is post his token selfies and lives alone. Keep in mind, some people I know who were close to him told me this wasn't the result of a tragedy, death, etc., and they are just as confused as I am. It's like when he is 17-ish years old, his personality just evaporated and never came back. It's sad to witness. Spirit Week. Seniors usually made class shirts. 60 or so seniors were suspended for a shirt that read "Pushing the Limit, Class of '08. That weekend, this kid, 16, got drunk as fuck at a party and allegedly high on mushrooms, made more believable by later evidence, 3 months after getting his license, and drove 3 friends home after said party in his Camaro. He successfully dropped them off, but T-boned a car pulling out of a golf course restaurant at 112 miles per hour. He killed the driver, leaving the pregnant girlfriend alive. Allegedly he was joking about crashing his new car the next day. It was unknown the man had passed at this time. He blew a 0.16% 2 hours after the crash. Of the 3 friends who were driven home, only one of them testified that they saw him drinking. The judge wanted to try him as an adult, but he was ultimately sentenced to 7 years, sim in a juvenile facility, until he was 21. After that I'm not really sure, but he was to remain in the system till he turned 25. After all this, He apparently moved back in with his parents in my neighborhood and I saw him after he got out buying beer and liquor. I've never wanted to hurt someone so badly. I've posted this elsewhere, so there's some copy pasta. One of the kids who testified he had not seen him drinking was a star athlete who ended up getting a full ride to a prominent state college. He got kicked out of his first full ride school for reasons I can only assume are being a pompous asshole, the kinda kid to blow you over if you didn't move out of his way, but his second full ride he blew that one by getting caught growing mushrooms. He fled school grounds after getting tipped off the cops were coming for him. Cops later found him under his bed at his mom's house. About 5 years after that happened, I made amends with a girl who had been in his friend group. They used to bully me in HS when I ran into her at a bar. Apparently 3 women had come out to say during HS/college he had rapped them. The first woman, she told me, wasn't believed until the other 2 came forward. Pose gonna be a pose point unrelated, but still an incident of becoming unpopular. Another kid got caught stealing phones and iPods. 2008. He ripped off like 30 different people, some in the class we shared together. Most people didn't get their items back because he already flipped them, and during his suspension 3 kids had made plans to give this kid a bunch of laxative gum and sugar-free gummy bears. During the middle of class this kid just got up and ran out holding onto his pants. He was forever known as the Brown Bomber after that and switched schools mid-year following that incident. The auto shop teacher we had knew something was amiss and the class eventually told him what happened. He was rolling laughing. Cool dude. Edit. Formatting. In middle school, we were pretty much all dumb and horny. This kid took it to another level, though he asked all the prettiest girls at school for nudes, and, if my memory is correct, sent a couple of unsolicited dick pics to some of them. He was reported to the principal and suspended. While he was gone, rumors started to spread. One of the girls who got one of his pics was in my Japanese class, and she refused to confirm or deny anything about the situation, but she was one of the nice ones. The general consensus by the end of class was that the dude's thing was small and hairy, and he was a creep. When his suspension ended, everyone avoided him like the plague. It was pretty sad. I went on a trip for my photo class 3 years after that, and the guy and I ended up in the same car. He seemed like a genuinely nice person. It's a shame that poor judgment pretty much ruined his middle school experience. This is long but worth it, trust me. In high school, this popular girl was adored by students and staff. She was very charming. She was most popular with the guys. Good looking guys were her trophies. She often asked out whatever guy she had her eye on, sleep with them, and then dump them. The guys all knew they were just conquests, but they didn't care. That was until Mike, not his real name, got asked out. Mike dressed like a punk, but he was genuinely a very sweet guy. Mike took her out on real dates. No sex. After a few dates, Mike broke things off. That did not go over well. Some pretty vulgar graffiti about Mike started appearing in the girls' bathrooms. It only took a few days for it to come out that popular girl was the one writing the graffiti. That destroyed her reputation with the teachers. Then it came out that Mike dumped her because she was pressuring him for sex. Yeah. Her game and popularity were over by the end of our junior year. She was very pregnant. When senior year started, she was married to the 20-something baby daddy. Last I heard, she's on marriage 3 or 4 now.